Well, Dr. Alford, thank you so much for joining us on the Communicative Leader. I know that you are a fellow communication scholar, and I'm excited to explore your research. So, you are looking at the concept of daughtering and defining it as unpaid, invisible work of holding a family together. So, I'm hoping, as we start, if you could, tell us how you see this concept of this invisible labor showing up in the corporate environment, especially as it relates to how women are expected to lead and communicate.
Yeah. First, thanks so much for having me on. I really
Mhm.
love getting together with a communication person and nerding out on all of those things that we love and
Mhm.
study all the time. So yeah, I study invisible labor. And to me, when I'm exploring that concept in my research, what that means is not only unpaid work, so there's lots of forms of unpaid work, but unpaid work that then nobody seems to be noticing. And it's not getting any kudos, it's not getting any credit, it's not getting shared, it's being taken up largely by women, and it is being done, and nobody seems to notice that it really matters. So the people who are doing it don't have a sense of feeling important or that their work matters. So when I study families and adult daughters, I see the invisible labor in families being things
Mhm.
like attending to everyone's needs, anticipating what people need before they need it.
Mhm.
For sure, smoothing over conflict, being aware, like, oh, this person's upset at this person, so I got to do this. Being peacekeepers who are taking in the emotional tension and really managing that. Trying to make sure people are having a good time at an event, thinking ahead about a good time, thinking ahead long, long, long in the future about a possible situation. And those behaviors, those invisible labor behaviors that we see in families, also
Mhm.
show up at work because women do that for our work families. Even if
Mhm.
we don't really like these people,
Yeah.
whether
Yeah.
we are, but many times we do like the people, at least mildly, that we work with. And so we smooth, we anticipate, we manage, we are um, organizing things, we're thinking ahead. And there's very little notice given to how that reduces the resources of women. It
Mhm.
drains our energy,
Yeah.
our time, our attention, and even our finances.
Yeah, and that's a great segue because I was thinking about this hidden cost, right? So, that you work a lot with how adult daughters carry this emotional weight of balancing their own lives with the needs of their parents. And I'm wondering from a leadership perspective in an organization, what is this communication cost when we have women coming in and carrying this invisible emotional load? And how can that deplete or compromise their authenticity and their strategic clarity of their messaging?
Well, you really hit the nail on the head with that word clarity. I think
Mhm.
that's a huge part of it. When leaders are emotionally overdrawn, when we overdraw
Mhm.
from our bank account of resources, our clarity suffers. So we're not as present in the moment, or we're not doing our best visionary thinking because
Mhm.
we're managing these other little things that are popping up in the moment. We're putting out tiny
Mhm.
fires in that we see, or thinking ahead about fires, and so we're not allowing ourselves to do some of the bigger dreaming, or to be the most functional leaders who have to do difficult things at work. Maybe we're
Mhm.
thinking too much about people's emotions, so you're softening some of the hard truths that you need to give, or you're in a
Mhm.
meeting and you're over explaining,
Mhm.
and or maybe somebody's birthday comes up, you take on an extra task that doesn't need to be done, or you take on extra
Mhm.
work instead of delegating it because you don't want to upset the balance.
Mhm.
And one of the things we talk about, um, particularly psychology, management, communication, we talk about resource gain and resource
Mhm.
loss. So when we draw down on that bank account, that resource account of our energy, our
Mhm.
time, our thinking, our emotions, it's not just little ducats. We can actually get in what scholars call a resource spiral.
Mhm.
And as we lose a resource, and it's not just going down teeny tiny bits like this, I'm moving my finger down a little bitty bit. It
Mhm.
can become like this tornado, this drain effect that then lots of things start to drain rapidly.
Yep.
And before we know it, we're totally overdrawn, burnt out,
Mhm.
in the dumps, and wondering how we got there.
Mhm. Yeah. And so let's kind of continue with pulling this thread of what's happening to many of these good daughters in the workplace. And, that many of these women, many people all together end up in positions, leadership positions, because they're subject matter experts. But they're not equipped from the role. They struggle with burnout. So, Allison, I'm wondering with your research, what are, the top 2, 3 common behaviors you see that good daughter persona, whether it's over anticipating others' needs, over functioning, what are we bringing into the workplace that is undermining our ability to really fulfill that titled leadership role we're in?
Yeah. Daughters in families, we really love being part of a team. We love being part of a group. Daughters are doing daughtering in our families in order to keep everyone connected because that connection and support really matters. So sometimes what happens is we take those ideas of connecting and bringing people together, and we take it to the workplace as if that
Mhm.
is the same kind of
Mm.
team family relationship.
Mhm.
But really, we can, that's a mistake we kind of make trying to transfer those skills.
Mhm.
And so, one of the things that we see that daughters do in families, and then they take it to the
Mhm.
workplace, is they jump in before anybody
Mhm.
asks, not
Mhm.
something that hasn't even been delegated to them. And as women, we're trying to solve a problem that's maybe not ours to fix, or we're
Mhm.
doing it because someone came to us and told us emotionally about that problem. So we make it our problem instead of,
Mhm.
moving it back onto them. And now I should also be clear to say daughters do these things in families. They're not necessarily healthy in families either to
Yeah.
do these things, but we bring them to the
Mhm.
workplace.
Yeah.
Another thing that women do is we just simply take on too much because we overemphasize ourselves as a necessary part of that experience. Like if I'm not
Mhm.
there, it'll fall apart without me. These people need
Mhm.
me. We don't take our PTO. We don't,
Mhm.
say that what we need in terms of, funding because we're
Mhm.
thinking I've just got to take it all on and kind of
Yeah.
be the martyr.
Mhm.
Um, but to our own detriment, but we're thinking, gosh, this really helps the group or the team.
Mhm.
But the amount that it helps the team is so little compared to the massive, uh,
Mhm.
you know, negative impact on ourselves.
Yeah.
And lastly, a daughtering behavior that we might see in families that could transfer to
Mhm.
the workplace is trying to avoid necessary tension
Mhm.
and just create harmony. And often
Yep.
it's a false harmony. And
Mhm.
when we're in the workplace, a good leader has to know when to allow tension or even
Mhm.
foster some
Mhm.
difficult feelings in order to help
Mhm.
the individuals they supervise grow.
Yeah.
And in families, we like to daughters like to shut that down,
Mhm.
keep everybody happy. There's no tension that we need.
Mhm.
And when we do that at work, we can actually stifle people
Mhm.
we're meant to be building up because we never let them experience difficulty.
Yep.
So that's something that daughters have to be aware of, that we take patterns that we do in our family
Mhm.
life, better or worse, and we bring them in the workplace
Yep.
because they just feel natural to us. They're just these
Mhm.
sort of worn paths that we just keep
Yep.
doing over and over
Yeah.
again.
Yeah. Yeah. And I see what you mean with a conflict. And it's funny because as a org com scholar, like conflict is great. People are invested. They want to advocate for a certain path. They're thinking about potential gains and, potential unintended consequences. But you're right, for a lot of folks, it is not embraced the same way that an org com scholar will like reach out with two arms for that. Excellent. So,
Yeah.
Allison, let's think about, I want to think about the language that you're using and that we're seeing around this. Um, in a way maybe that we can start to make that invisible more visible. So the work of daughtering, it's often taken for granted because it's unspoken. So I'm wondering, how can leaders, especially women, begin to name and articulate this invisible labor they're doing, whether it's this personal load or the hidden emotional work they're doing for a team? So how do they begin to name this and articulate this to others, so it's received as strategic communication of a boundary, and just recognizing I'm doing more than I should be, rather than complaining or whining or not pulling their weight?
Yeah. Yeah, that's such a important question, as how do we communicate the thing that we're talking about and say it's a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I recently have been on a journey to write a book.
Mm-hmm.
The book's coming out February 2026. It's called Good Daughtering. And the in that book, the number one thing, the first thing I talk about is, first you got to figure out what is it that I'm doing. What are these
Mm-hmm.
patterns? Name, figure out what the invisible is and make it
Mm-hmm.
visible. And I talk about daughtering in the book mostly as a form of relating to your parents. But I also talk about how daughtering could be in the workplace. It could
Yeah.
be, maybe of a work dad or a work mom. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
you daughter your neighbor at home who's just this, older person who, you have this sort of caring attitude toward. So I like the idea of this idea, Leah, of thinking about
Mm-hmm.
how am I doing daughtering in the workplace, and kind of separating, like, not every behavior I'm doing to care for everyone is daughtering, but sometimes I'm bringing
Yeah.
that to
And
the
that's important to
workplace.
raise that up. Yeah. Like you said, if
Yeah,
you don't want people to say, like, I'm warm or I'm trying to relate and build trust, and we don't want them to dismiss that as like, oh, shoot, I'm daughtering.
yeah, yeah. So I think, it is, as women, we have a
Mm-hmm.
lot of complexity and we do a lot
Mm-hmm.
of roles. But daughter is the one we've always done and will always do. We're
Mm-hmm.
born a daughter, we die a daughter.
Mhm.
Um, and while we are workers in the workplace, we are doing our working role. We might also
Mhm.
have a mother role,
Mhm.
a spouse role or partner role. Maybe we're voters, we're neighbors. Again, there's so many things. And so
Mhm.
when we're in the workplace on any given day, we're navigating which role to bring forward. And sometimes we're bringing forward that daughtering role if we're trying to smooth, manage,
Mhm.
make a pathway. Um, Sometimes we're bringing forward one of our other roles. But what I talk about in the book is we got to figure that out. We've got to do the
Mhm.
thinking work. And the thinking work means I need to sit with this. I need to disentangle it. I need to ponder it. I need to make lists and evaluate myself. What am I doing? And which role is that behavior attached to?
Mhm.
And then the last thing I do in the book is say, okay, if you want to make a change, if you want to
Mhm.
reduce conflict or find a partner in helping you with this behavior, or just get some gold stars for what you're
Mhm.
doing,
Yeah.
how do I talk to people about it? And
Yeah.
so the book has these activities all throughout. um, but the essence of these things is thinking work. And we said
Mhm.
at the top, at the first question, what do we lose if we're
Yeah.
doing too many of these caring behaviors? We lose clarity, we
Yeah.
lose vision. This is my
Mhm.
call to your listeners to recognize we have to take a step back sometimes and think
Mhm.
about our own thinking. We
Yeah.
have to
Yeah.
notice our own communication. And
Mhm.
that sort of meta
Yeah.
communicative activity
Yeah.
is so, so important, but we
Mhm.
rarely do it. We're just stuck in the
Mhm.
daily things. And
Yep.
I want to encourage your listeners to go to that bigger picture place.
Yeah. So, Alice, I want to hear more about your book in a moment. My next question does that, and it sounds incredible. But when you're talking and you're talking about these activities and these reflections, and I love that in a book. I love that it's something that people are learning, but also working through. But I'm wondering if you would suggest going to trusted coworkers or a leader or people in your home and asking them what they see.
Absolutely. You know, as communication scholars, we tend to say more communication, the better. So when we ask other people
Yeah.
what they see,
Mhm. Mhm.
we're also asking them to help us with the language. This was kind of
Yeah.
what you were
Mhm.
talking about previously. We
Mhm.
just don't have enough words to
Yeah.
talk about women's behavior in general.
Mhm.
And so we often borrow words. Like if we're caring for anyone, we say, oh, we're mothering them. I'm mothering
Mhm.
my mother. Oh, I'm mothering everybody at
Mhm.
work. Oh, I'm the mother hen around here. Or if we're have a good relationship with our dad or something, would say like, well, we're best friends.
Mhm.
Well, maybe we have this relationship with somebody in the office and we'll say it's my work BFF. And in
Yep.
many ways, while cute and AIM has a good intention, those things are problematic because they lead us astray in thinking certain things about these people. Like
Mhm.
this
Mhm.
workplace person is not your
Yep.
best friend unless they are literally your best friend everywhere outside
Yes.
of work.
Yep. Yep.
Long-term trustworthy, and
Mhm.
um, and you're not anybody's mother at
Yeah.
work unless you're literally
Yeah,
their
in a
mother.
family business.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, if a family
Uh,
business, then yeah,
yeah.
you're their mother.
Yep.
But those those
Like the
language
labels. Yeah.
choices,
Yep.
the labels, they happen because we
Yeah.
don't have enough words
Mhm.
for caring behaviors
Mhm.
or for the resource use or for
Yep.
the labors that women do that are so vital to
Mhm.
connecting others. Because
Yep.
what we're not saying here, to be super clear,
Mhm.
is stop caring for people at work. We're not
Yeah.
saying
Yep.
that.
Yep. Yep.
We need
Yep.
thoughtful, caring individuals.
Mhm.
We just also need the words to be able to
Mhm.
describe to people the care, provisions, the
Mhm.
connecting, the
Yep.
thinking, the noticing, the
Yep.
emotional outlay. And so, what we're advocating here for is more nuanced words to
Yep.
describe what it is you're doing so that you see it and others
Mhm.
see it. And if a trusted individual in your life can say, if you said, list everything you see me doing at work, and your
Mhm.
partner at home could start putting some new labels and new
Mhm.
words on it that help you and others better understand that resource
Mhm.
use, that's all the
Yep.
better, because we really need more language and communication around these special
Mhm.
things women
Yep.
do. And I find for daughters with daughtering, especially in families, daughters aren't looking to stop doing daughtering. We're not
Mhm.
saying, oh, this is so much labor
Yep.
because we want to quit doing it. We just want to
Mhm.
talk about it. We want to
Yep.
share it with others, and we want
Mhm.
it to matter to everybody.
Mhm. Yep. You're right. And I know we're going to get to this later on, but I think part of this too is once we have that awareness, we can enact healthy boundaries. And I know you'll talk about self-honoring. So it's a good way for us to kind of tee up there. But first, Allison, I'd like to think about your book. And I know you wrote this as a roadmap for creating relationships that flourish and aren't just functional, aren't just transactional. And so in the workplace, this might mean renegotiating roles and expectations. And I was hoping you could walk us through kind of a practical strategy for the leader who needs to recalibrate or move from that overburdened role where, like you said, they're mother henning or they're they're displaying care, but in a way where they're bent over backwards doing it, at the expense likely of that titled role. So I'm wondering, how do we do that where we set this healthy recalibration, this healthier boundary, but we're not damaging that relationship or the trust that we have with that member or our team?
Yeah, yeah. Okay, and so there's two ways that I want to talk about doddering
Mhm.
at work. And the first is if I'm doing doddering behaviors for my workplace people, right?
Mhm.
Especially, maybe I have an older boss or a trusted
Mhm.
wise person there, and I am directing these kind of doddering behaviors at them.
Mhm.
And that's, I think, really what your question is aimed at. But
Mhm.
I want to start with the second one instead. And the second way I want to
Yeah.
think about doddering at work is that sometimes you need to advocate for taking time off work to go do
Mhm.
your doddering with your family. And
Mhm.
the whole workplace needs to agree to see that as a valuable way to use our
Mm.
PTO. Now, we
Yeah.
all know we should be able to use PTO for whatever. I should be
Yeah.
able to use it for a Netflix day at home,
Mhm.
but
Yeah.
that's not the reality. People are going to ask you, what were you using that PTO for? And people
Mhm.
can feel judged depending on your workplace. Not
Yeah.
all PTO is given or granted.
Mhm.
So I do say in my book, one of the things I say is we need policy and understanding at work when women
Mhm.
need to take off from work to go do
Mhm.
doddering as a
Yeah.
valid life role. And we're
Yeah.
quick to say, oh, well, she had to take off work because she's a mom and her kid is sick, or she had to take off work because her husband had knee surgery. So she had to.
Mhm.
We're not very quick to think it's a good idea for a daughter to take off because she needs to
Mhm.
give her mom a tour around the city because she's
Yeah.
visiting for her one time a year visit.
Mhm.
Like, well, that's just fun time. That doesn't
Yeah.
matter. So that's the first thing I want to say is
Mhm.
um, agree that daughtering in people's lives is important
Important.
and allow
Yep.
that PTO and allow for policies that prioritize this as a real family activity. Okay, so then that back to the first way that daughtering shows up at work is in care provisions and care provisions.
Mm.
And so we've described that we need language for how women are doing daughtering at work. Um, but one of the things that makes this labor invisible is that we as women allow it to stay invisible. We tend to
Mhm.
have this narrative that being good means being selfless. And as
Yep.
long as it's, if I'm a martyr, it's
Mhm.
okay because everybody else benefits. The
Yep.
problem is that just becomes this self
Oof.
erasure.
Yep.
And we're not being the type of leader that we would want other women to
Yep.
emulate.
Yep.
So we have to
Mhm.
negotiate for ourselves. We have to advocate for ourselves. We've
Mhm.
got to stand up. And I think there's a movement towards this. I know I see
Mhm.
it for sure over in
Yep.
healthcare, where we say,
Mhm.
hey, if I go to the doctor and I'm not listened to, I need to stand up for myself and say, I'm not leaving until I get, whatever.
Mhm.
We can do that at work as well. We can stand
Yep.
up for ourselves and say, hey, I spent time and
Mhm.
money on creating this Canva one pager for our client. I bought
Mhm.
Canva Pro with my own money because y'all wouldn't buy it around here. And
Mhm.
I spent extra time off of work doing this. I mean, we just need to say what we're doing.
Mhm.
And I'm
Yep.
not I'm not intending to make that sound so simple. So what I want to encourage women to
Mhm.
do is take it a little bit at a time. You
Yep.
don't have to go in there and make a big splash. It begins
Mhm.
with little bits of telling people what you're
Mhm.
doing,
Yep.
making it visible, describing what you're doing.
Mhm.
It begins with small conversations with the leaders around you, with your team,
Mhm.
identifying these. So taking the invisible, making it visible. And then, of
Mhm.
course, as we discuss in the book, it also has to do with setting boundaries. So you
Yep.
need to know when you've reached your limit and put up a wall and say, I guess
Mhm.
that part won't get done.
Yep.
Either someone else will pick it up or it won't get done,
Mhm.
and the
Yep.
city won't crumble because that thing
Mhm.
didn't get done. And put up a boundary, and that's the end of your workday, or that's the end of your
Yep.
resources at that time.
Yep, exactly. And you're right. It's little steps, and it's building that into a habit where it's not as scary and it becomes more normative for you to say, "Nope, I'm
Yeah.
abdicating for myself."
Yeah, well,
So,
I would say,
yeah,
Leah,
good. Yeah.
about that. A lot of times
Mhm.
I talk to women, and let's say in a family context, and they're like, I'm being walked
Mhm.
all over and I'm just doing all this.
Mm.
And then when they
Yep.
finally decide to share, they write a text message to an entire group of 10 people
Mhm.
in the family. And the text message is massively long. And it's
Yeah.
like when they finally decide to do it, they just vomit all the
Yeah.
feelings
Yeah.
at once. And you think that you'll feel better, but then you're actually going to get a hangover from
Yes.
oversharing.
Yeah.
So what I what I recommend for
Mhm.
women is that bit by bit, one conversation at a
Yep.
time, one text at a time, to one
Mhm.
person at a time, you chip
Yep.
away at it, which means you have to have
Mhm.
persistent, continued belief in yourself
Yep.
and your worth, and that the daughtering that you're doing is valuable and necessary.
Mhm.
And so there's some internal work to do too.
Yeah.
You
Yep.
can't just get the courage for just a
Yeah.
moment and then blast everyone.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a
You
lot of
have
cleanup.
to maintain. Yeah, there's a lot of cleanup
Yeah.
after that. You
Yep.
have to maintain persistent belief
Mhm.
in your own value and
Mhm.
advocate for it over and over and over again. And change is small, but the
Mhm.
changes will be real and
Yep.
meaningful, and they'll stick.
Yeah. And that's perfect. So I wanted to ask you about kind of this idea of leadership, presence, and resilience. So I know that your work, it encourages daughters to reflect on relationships, honor their own needs, their own desires. So for our listeners, I'm wondering, from the work that you do, Allison, what is the most critical internal old narrative or these self-imposed stories that you see oftentimes in your work and your interviews related to service that many of our listeners need to shed in order to have that vibrant, consistent leadership presence and, that resiliency?
Yeah, I think that it's such a smart way of talking about that, Leah. What is something old and what do we
Hmm.
need to shed? So I want to stay inside that great visual.
Hmm.
We're wearing old clothes. We're wearing an itchy suit. And that's the old way of thinking,
Hmm.
this is how I show up. I would say that a huge part of daughtering and kind of gets um, what kind of gets us in the wrong place is a
Hmm.
cultural idea of what's expected of us. Okay.
Hmm.
Women are wandering around thinking, I have to. Who else is
Hmm.
going to do it? Of course I'm
Hmm.
expected to do this. And we often haven't ever been asked to do it or even told by
That's the
anyone,
truth. Yeah.
I want you to do it.
Here is your role. You must do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have absorbed it
Yep.
through cultural
Hmm.
messages. So I'm also not gaslighting women and saying, you came
Yeah.
up with this and you're wrong.
Yep.
We've absorbed it through movies
Oh,
or,
certainly. Yep. And what we've observed in our own
books,
family,
what
right?
we've
And
observed
extended
over
families.
many
Yeah, exactly. Friends,
decades, and
families. Yeah.
watching multi generations. And a
Yep.
lot of times, if we do that from childhood, we're watching different
Mhm.
generations. So we're watching elder generations. And so we're not
Yep.
just learning something, we're watching different generations' patterns. And again, we don't take time to take stock of, well, what does my generation do and think, and what do I
Mhm.
think? So one of the most interesting studies I did, I asked women, what do you think that you ought to be doing in your
Mhm.
relationship? And also, what do you think that your mom expects from you?
Mm.
And it was so interesting to notice that when women took a minute to ask themselves, what does my mom want? There were some who were like, she wants so much. But there were actually a bunch of them who said, she
Mhm.
probably would want me to quit doing this. She really
Yep.
doesn't need and want all
Yeah.
this from me. She wants
Mhm.
me to be free. She wants me to be a
Yep.
career woman. She wants me to use my brain
Mhm.
for intellectual things and not family dinner. She
Yep.
wants me to go live my life with my kids and my spouse.
Mhm.
And um and the juxtaposition was this massive light bulb for women, like,
Yep.
huh, I never ask anyone what they want me to be
Yeah.
doing. I was just assuming. So the
Mhm.
narrative that we need to
Mhm.
shed is that we have to be doing these
Mhm.
things,
Yep.
that we ought to be, or that the title of the book and the title of that research study
Yeah.
was that to do these things means that we're good, that we're
Yep.
good
Yep.
daughters, or that we're doing
Mhm.
good daughtering because we're doing things that nobody ever said we needed to do. Nobody
Mhm.
asked us to do. Nobody's noticing that we're doing. Nobody's thanking us for. And we've got
Mhm.
to stop and shed some of those and take
Yep.
off that itchy old suit and say,
Yep.
what does modern today version of me want to do? What
Mhm.
do my parents want from me? What does my work colleagues and team need and want from me? And then
Mhm.
lastly, do I agree and want to
Yeah.
do those things also?
Yep.
Will they make me happy too? So there's
Mhm.
some calibrating to do.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really, really helpful because I think you're right. So many people just feel like this is their birth obligation and
Yeah.
have never stopped to examine that.
Yeah, to say, like, where the heck did that idea even
Mhm.
come from? Like, why am I
Yeah.
carrying this
Exactly.
heavy
Yeah.
backpack?
Yeah.
Being like, well, I
Exactly.
guess I
Yeah.
have to
That
carry it. And
no one even
and the
said.
truth is, nobody
Yeah.
said that you had to
Yeah.
carry it.
Yep.
And so we
Yep.
have to stop being
Mhm.
martyrs. Not that women are being, I'm not want to say that in talk in these terms that are so mean or
No, but I think you're
unkind
right. It's
to
like the
ourselves.
socialization. I think it's that it's not that we're necessarily choosing to lay down at this altar,
Yeah.
but it's been displayed so long that we just think that's the way we do it. And we haven't stopped to question whether we should.
Yeah. And I'm sure you see this in your work in organizations too, that
Yep.
there's some types of
Exactly.
leaders who
Yep.
think, I got to do all of this because
Mm-hmm.
these people won't
Yep.
do it right, or it'll take too
Exactly.
long to
Oh,
tell these
yep.
people how to do it. And that's not
Mm-hmm.
great leadership. That's not
No. No.
delegating, it's not sharing the load. And ultimately,
Mm-hmm.
you're holding the team back by
Mm-hmm.
having that sort
Yep.
of self aggrandizement
Mm-hmm.
that you're
Yep.
so necessary. And the same thing is
Exactly.
happening in our families. We're burning ourselves out and thinking,
Yep.
I am so necessary and
Mm-hmm.
I must do it all, that we're not sharing it or dropping some of it.
Yep.
And really, our families would like a lighter, happier version of ourselves.
Oh yeah.
And your
Yep.
workplace team at work would like
Mm-hmm.
to learn new skills, share in the work, progress
Yep.
together, do it as a team,
Mm-hmm.
fail as a team. But they don't need you to be the
Mm-hmm.
czar of all the
Yeah.
work.
Exactly.
Um, Open
Exactly. I
up
really,
the
yeah.
floodgates and share it.
Yeah. I connected with your backpack metaphor because I was thinking, whether it is as a daughter in the interpersonal family context or as a leader in the workplace, one, maybe the leader does need to carry the backpack, the figurative, the literal, or the figurative backpack. But, if we're leading from the front, if we're being held down by it, then we're slowing our team down. And, in with daughtering, it can be like, who else can hold some of this? If we do need to hold this, it's not only my responsibility. So figuring out, delegation is a little different in families, but it's still part of that idea of, like you said, shedding that old wool suit that doesn't fit anymore.
Yeah, and in the modern workplace, we need to acknowledge, like, hey, maybe they did this thing 20 years ago and that was super successful, and
Mm-hmm.
now they're, this top Fortune
Mm-hmm.
100 company. But what was effective 20 years ago is not necessarily going to
Yeah,
work for us today.
exactly.
And so we
Exactly.
are in a post-COVID world. We are in a modern world.
Mm-hmm.
We're in a millennial
Mhm.
driven, Gen X, and now and with
Mhm.
Gen Z
Mhm.
driven workplace. So why would
Yep.
we use the greatest generation or the boomers way of
Mhm.
leading? We're not going
Yep.
to. Great for them. No shade to
Mhm.
them. It worked,
Yep.
but that was 20 years
Yep.
ago. That was 40
Yep.
years ago. And so our
Exactly.
history books are full of these fantastic leaders, but we have to
Mhm.
be the newest today version of a fantastic
Yes.
leader.
Yep.
And that comes from communicating with our team. But the first type of communication is intrapersonal. What am
Mhm.
I doing? What can
Mhm.
I change? What do I need? How will I be the best version of me at work?
Mhm. Yep. Exactly. And so, thinking about work, this next question is when I was preparing for a conversation, it's just kind of purely a personal curiosity. And I was thinking about, you know, I'm obviously a daughter and I'm an oldest daughter. And so I'm thinking about this crisis management in families and how, whether or not it is assigned to me, that a lot of times I'm like, okay, how do we go about this? So I'm wondering, Allison, if you found, when daughters are often responsible for crisis mode management in the family, how does this, whether they are in the thick of it in their home life, they're feeling like they're always in this reactive communication mode, or if they're just doing it occasionally in a triage mode. But how does that kind of posture, how can that impede their ability to shift to the strategic proactive communication at work when crises do happen, or when unexpected events occur?
Yeah, we are familiar with these ideas from neuroscience that sometimes when we make pathways in our brain of ways to do things, we
Mm-hmm.
get those pathways really worn
Yep.
down and we just keep
Mm-hmm.
going in that same way. So if
Mm-hmm.
we're a daughter and in our family life at home, we're used to reactivity. Oh, something happened, I'll handle it. This issue has come up, handle it in this way. Go, go, go. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
middle of the night, something needs to happen. I'm going to get up and handle it. Oh, this is, happening over here. I'm going to jump on the phone with 3 people and I'm going to manage it. We can take those really worn neural pathways and
Mm-hmm.
take that reactivity to the workplace and be in a constant state of emotional triage and really be,
Mm-hmm.
again, thinking me first, like I have to handle things. Um, but one of the ways that I
Mm-hmm.
think that, and so that so to be clear, that really impedes teamwork.
Yep.
That impedes collaboration
Mm-hmm.
because we are me centered to our detriment, that I've got to
Mm-hmm.
handle it. And we have lied to ourselves that we're the best for the job, that we're the
Yep.
best at handling it. But really,
Yep.
we're hiring great, smart, capable people and we've got
Yeah.
to leverage them.
Mm-hmm.
So, one of the things I talk about in the book that I think we can apply here as well
Mm-hmm.
is that we need to be aware of thinking of two types of satisfaction or two types of happiness.
Mm-hmm.
And there's hedonic happiness and then there's
Mm-hmm.
eudaimonic happiness. Are you
Mm-hmm.
familiar with these
Mm-hmm.
types
Yes.
of happiness?
Yep.
And I'm trying to think of it's Seligman. Seligman writes, has a really
Yep.
great book on this. And also,
Okay.
there's another great book by Gretchen. I can't think of her last name, but it's called The Happiness Project. And I
Oh,
recommend
Gretchen
both of
Rubin.
these.
Yeah. Yep.
Yes, I
Yep.
recommend both of these books
Mm-hmm.
for leaders who are
Yep.
interested in thinking about how do I change? How do I change a
Mm-hmm.
deeply ingrained neural pathway? Well, we have to have new forms of thinking.
Yep.
And um, so the two types of happiness. Hedonic happiness
Mm-hmm.
is in the moment, what's fun, what's satisfying, what gives us that zing,
Mm-hmm.
what is it that I am like, oh, that felt really good. So
Mm-hmm.
in our uh, life at work, sometimes we think solving it, quick answer,
Mm.
getting a solution, that zings me like, oh, I feel so accomplished today.
Yep.
But there's this other very important kind of relaxed back
Mm-hmm.
burner happiness that we often neglect, and it's called eudaimonic happiness, and it refers to the type of happiness that we have a life well lived, that
Mhm.
we have invested in things that are important, and
Yep.
that we can feel good if we were at the end of our lives looking back and thinking, I did that really
Mhm.
well. And eudaimonic happiness means that we often don't get the zing of the quick hit
Yep.
of in the moment happiness. We have to delay
Mhm.
happiness in order to feel productive. So in the workplace, that means not solving things,
Yep.
not fixing everything, but teaching and
Mhm.
training others. And over time, we will build up leaders. We will
Mhm.
have a stronger team. We'll have more thoughtful pitches to clients. We'll
Yep.
have more innovative thought leader ideas.
Mhm.
And when we look back over 5 or 10 years in the workplace, we can say, I really invested in this beautifully deep, meaningful, slow payoff way.
Yep. Yep.
So we have to be aware of, I call it like taking out the trash. So
Mhm.
another way to think of it is, I like being a homeowner. And being a homeowner is part of my eudaimonic happiness for my
Mhm.
life, that
Yep.
I really enjoy the
Mhm.
satisfaction of owning something and building, the
Mhm.
the wealth over time. By home ownership
Mhm.
allows you to build slow wealth. I don't like taking out the trash. I don't like when I have to clean the gutters. So
Yep.
owning a house doesn't always bring a lot of hedonic happiness, you
Mhm.
know, meaning I don't always get that quick zing of happiness.
Yep.
Now, there are some
Yep.
times where I do. I put up my Christmas lights and I'm like,
Yep.
zing,
Yep.
hedonic happiness. Oh, it's great to
Yeah.
own a house. I put up
Yep.
my Christmas lights, or I
Yep.
painted my front door
Mhm.
blue, and I'm like, oh, I like that.
Mhm.
I don't want to go too far into my metaphor, but I am
Mhm.
saying to leaders,
Yep.
we can't be reactive all the time, and
Yep.
everything can't be hedonic happiness. We've
Mhm.
got to be aware of the slow forms of productivity and the
Mhm.
bigger form, this important form of purposeful workplace action.
Mhm.
And that's our eudaimonic happiness. And that
Mhm.
is something that we've also got to use in our family lives as
Yep.
daughters. What is it that I'm doing that's kind of like taking out the trash,
Mhm.
but it's not super fun, but it builds strong
Mhm.
families?
Yep. Yep. That's really, really helpful. And I think so my next question, and I think you've already that last response really got to it. It was this idea of a flourishing communication culture in the workplace. Because I know that um, a lot of the work that you do in your forthcoming book, Good Daughtering, is about, building that flourishing culture. So, is there anything else, Allison, you'd like to add where, all employees can feel seen, valued, empowered, and not just over functioning when we're kind of contributing to this collective, collaborative, flourishing culture?
Yeah, we've kind of been talking about it, but just to repeat,
Mhm.
when we as women overdo, overextend, and do it all ourselves, we
Mhm.
think we're helping. But what we could actually accidentally be doing
Mhm.
is not allowing the beauty and diversity of our team to shine.
Mhm. Yep.
And so then our team members are not feeling
Mhm.
seen. And what contributes to flourishing is every person feeling seen and that their
Mhm.
work matters.
Yep.
So in families, if I'm the big sister, I'm actually the little
Mhm.
sister in my family, and I
Mhm.
do everything,
Mhm.
I could say to myself, I'm doing everything because no one else will do anything.
Mhm.
Um, and nobody's giving me any kudos or gold stars, and nobody's
Mhm.
noticing. So I feel bad because I don't feel like I matter when I'm doing all the work. But
Mhm.
I have to leave some work on the table for someone else
Yep.
to do so they can use their gifts
Mhm.
and skills, and then they
Yep.
can be seen and shine, and they can come and be
Mhm.
the lead singer
Yeah.
on the stage. And the same is true at work. As women, we cannot lie to ourselves that taking care of everything is
Yeah.
helpful or all good. We
Mhm.
must leave things to be done and allow people to grow into the skills to do those things, which
Mhm.
means they're going to fail at some of them sometimes, or
Mhm.
certain things will be undone in order for people to notice, like, whoops, somebody needed to do that and it didn't get done. We have to
Yeah.
leave gaps.
Mhm. Yeah.
Then people will lean into those gaps
Mhm.
with their gifts, their skills,
Yeah.
their diverse
Mhm.
perspectives. So we cannot have the hubris of thinking
Yeah.
we're the best choice all the time.
Mhm.
So, a flourishing culture,
Mhm.
everybody gets to participate with their gifts and skills, and there are going
Yeah.
to be some foibles along the way.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
then when they act, we either help them grow or we commend
Mhm.
them for a job well done. We care by noticing their work. But first, we have to
Mhm.
allow them to do work.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so helpful and a nice reminder. And I hope that listeners who have been feeling like they've had to do this are taking your words as permission, like their permission slip is signed by Dr. Allison Alford, that they can take a step back and let other people pitch in and to do the work to make it more equitable. Excellent.
It's
So
not only a
yeah,
permission slip, it is a prescription.
I
You
love that.
must step
Yes.
back.
Yeah.
You
Yep.
must allow
Mhm.
others to do.
Mhm.
You must leave things undone.
Mhm.
I
Yep.
tell you now, please do
Yep.
that, because the beauty of our team, the beauty of our
Mhm.
families is diversity. And
Yep.
different people have different skills, different attitudes, and different ways of doing things.
Mhm.
And we want to see those things come forward.
Yep.
We need to see those things come forward.
Yep. Exactly. I love that. A prescription. So, Allison, I have two final questions for you. This is how we end all episodes of the Communicative Leader, and these questions kind of work together. So, the first part is, what is the pragmatic leadership or communication tip, challenge, advice you want to leave our titled leaders out there, our friends who are, managers, directors, chairs? And then the second part is, what is the leadership or leadership communication advice, challenge that you want to leave for employees of all ranks?
Yeah, my first challenge to leaders, to daughters in the workplace and in the
Mm-hmm.
home is audit your invisible labor, audit your
Mm-hmm.
bandwidth. What
Yep.
is the invisible work, which is unpaid and unacknowledged labor
Mm-hmm.
that you're doing? And it can be emotional, it can be cognitive, it can be tasks, and it can also be in the
Mm-hmm.
form of identity that nobody is seeing but people are benefiting from.
Mm-hmm.
Name it. That's the first step to
Yeah.
then doing some calibrating where you could
Mm-hmm.
redistribute it. Okay.
Yep.
And my advice to employees and to others is see communication as care. Many times with communication, we think
Mm-hmm.
communication is talking.
Mm-hmm.
If we're extra thoughtful, we say communication as listening. But
Mm-hmm.
communication is also care. So care
Mm-hmm.
provisions are a communication effort coming toward you. Whether you're a manager or an intern,
Mm-hmm.
the words that you use to describe those communication acts of care,
Mm-hmm.
uh, they can create belonging or they can create burnout. So
Yep.
being clear, naming, labeling what people are doing
Yeah.
with clarity and kindness, but also adding boundaries. These are
Mm-hmm.
not opposing forces. These are a
Mm-hmm.
complementary match set that creates a
Mm-hmm.
thriving, flourishing workplace.
Yep.
And daughters, we need to do that in our families as well. And we need to
Mm-hmm.
think of it as a whole set, a whole
Yep.
system of things that help us stay connected.
That's so helpful. I'm writing notes down. I really love that communication is care, and making that all part and parcel and recognizing that, you know, advocating for boundaries or demonstrating care through your words or actions, it's all intertwined and interdependent. So insightful, Allison. I cannot wait. I'm gonna go pre-order your book. I cannot wait to have it and to work through this. This has been a really helpful conversation for me. I know it's going to be really helpful and insightful for our listeners. So thank you for sharing your time and expertise with us.
Thanks so much, Leah. I really appreciated being here. I'm so grateful for you and your listeners giving it some of that thoughtful time
Mhm.
and consideration. And I feel really seen today. So thank you.
Excellent.